Hi, everyone. Welcome in. If you wouldn't mind putting in the chat where you're joining from today, we'd love to see how far we've been able to reach on this one. Love to see it. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. If this is your first time joining, welcome. This is the second in a four-part series of Kubernetes Level Up program that we're doing with Broadcom. We're excited to bring part two today. So if you missed part one, we do have the on-demand recordings on our YouTube channel, and we will be publishing these recordings in that same playlist so you can get all caught up. This morning we have Jad. Jad Elzine is the technology leader at Broadcom with over 26 years of experience. He's going to be telling us how VCF delivers golden paths for platform engineering. Jad, I'll kick it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Erica. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon or evening, depending on where you're coming from. Really excited about our content today. We have actually a whole day or half day, just loaded up really great stuff. But I'm going to kick things off with kind of a primer on a topic called platform engineering. Now, this might seem like an obvious topic and an obvious set of slides for a lot of you who are familiar with platform engineering. I, I guess we can say made the leap from cloud architecture, cloud administration to platform engineering. But in the spirit of setting the stage for the rest of the day and what Miles and Shri and Hugo have in store for you, I'm going to give you our take, right? The VMware take. And considering a lot of you are coming from a VMware environment, one of the things we hear a lot is, how do we make the leap? Or how do we merge with those existing teams? Or how do I propose that this is a methodology that we need to implement for our private cloud and our capabilities? So um, I have very limited time, and there's just so much I want to share, but we will squeeze it in the next 30 minutes. But if there are any pressing questions after this session, or if you want to spend more time on anything, please do reach out to me, the team, and I'm happy to dive a little bit deeper into whatever it is. Right. So with all of that out of the way, get comfortable and let's go ahead and get going. So, this all starts with the application, and we've constantly said and heard and know that application is king, right? The rest of the infrastructure, the cloud, the services, the developer platforms, all of those exist because of the application, and the application is key. Now, over time, we've done various things to help manage and orchestrate and lifecycle applications. But what we're talking about now, with this huge shift of VCF to be very much modern app centric, Kubernetes centric, but also hybrid, of course, for existing VMs, as what are the needs of the apps, and why are customers, or why have customers in the past chosen the benefits and efficiencies and scalability of public cloud, right? It's because of the application. The apps drove those moves, and the apps, especially its data, is what's driving it back on-prem, and that's something we're seeing significantly. And I'm curious for anybody on the call here. Raise your hand if you're seeing this as well. Virtually, raise your hand. So the app requirements, when we're talking about the enterprise, right? We have this multi-platform dilemma that we're currently in, this swivel chair management. And common platform, common services, common tools is probably one of the leading factors of how do I retool for bringing apps back on-prem, right? So doing things in a unified manner to drive efficiency and to essentially be able to manage all apps in the same exact way, regardless of runtime, regardless of infrastructure, is also up there. This is, when I say driving factor, this is beyond the need for the application to come on-prem in the first place, or if it's already on-prem. These are things that are brewing and are very actively impacting and influencing decisions, right? But once that application is there, or once I've got my common platforms, I also need to be able to discover and see and consume everything in the same exact way, right? So I could have like top tier management and capability of my entire environment. But if I don't see something, if I can't discover it, if I can't understand what's on my network and how it's conforming to my policies and how it's communicating, and I'm also in a whole world of hurt. So we have to address that as well. And then, of course, this leads to things like increased productivity, scalability, and manageability and life cycle of the underlying infrastructure. None of that should be new to you folks. Um, Now, at the organizational level, right, we have a, a bunch of different hats we've seen over the years. Again, a lot of the siloed infrastructure admins moving towards a central, cloud admin team or cloud architecture team, the Tiger team, or what have you. But from an application perspective, we're seeing the cloud admins and the application teams, platform engineers, and SREs, and those folks coming together in yet another combined team. This is actually an important move for delivering what it is that we need to deliver for the next generation of apps and infrastructure. But if we break these down, you've got your enterprise admins, and these are the folks who are your traditional data center enterprise admins. They function across or they interact with all the layers of the infrastructure, and they are responsible ultimately for the SLAs delivering the core infrastructure and the services that the data center provides. Now, this is an overwhelming job, and I'm sure Lai can agree there. And there's a bunch of silos that exist even within the reach of the enterprise admin. Now, moving across to the line of business or the tenant admins. Now, these are administrators that have a very focused role or job or function or scope, but don't necessarily have the visibility across those silos. And in a world where we're consolidating platforms and consolidating policy and wanting to do everything in the same way, this could also be a problem. Platform engineers. Now, this is a growing team, also the topic today. These teams are designed to build the platform. Their key deliverables, something called the internal developer platform. That is their product, right? If we were to consider platform engineers as a manufacturer of a thing, the thing they manufacture is the IDP or the internal developer platform. Now, they are dependent on the enterprise admins, the capabilities of the infrastructure, the services available to them, because they need to go in and carve things out and make it available to their developers. And that takes us to the developer, the consumer, the DevOps engineer, whatever you want to call them. These are the folks that ultimately are building applications and services that rely on everything else downstream, and simply want to be able to get the access they need, the services they need, and deliver and commit the code that they are required to deliver. So these are the personas, the characters of this story, and this is a lot of what's driving VCF and what we're delivering. We'll get into that in a little bit as well. So again, if I am moving a little bit fast, that's just for the sake of trying to get things done in time. So for those of you who've been around, software development cycle has been a thing that a lot of us in our lifetimes have dealt with in one form or another, right? Early on, talking about waterfall services, the ability to define, or the process of defining capabilities up front, and then software was built and tested sequentially, and rolled out in phases, and it worked. It had a lot of complexity, and didn't necessarily scale or provide the speed in which applications started demanding. And then we have this whole agile movement, right, with DevOps. And this is where we're starting to break down those silos between dev and operations. And we introduce things like automation, continuous integration or CI/CD. And this was, the early example of shared responsibility for delivering applications, right? It's dev and ops that came together. It was considered hugely beneficial. Still today, a big part of application development. It was a huge leap forward. But still operated within the constraints of traditional infrastructure and traditional services, right? Now, public cloud blew up, cloud native services, became a de facto way of developing applications. And, this is where, elasticity, scale, resilience all happen on day one. Applications are made up of microservices, largely leveraging the individual cloud native services of whatever cloud provider it is. AWS, obviously, a huge leader here. But this was all built largely for Kubernetes, right? Kubernetes, keep in mind, was designed by hyperscalers for hyperscaler problems. And then the result here is kind of where we are today. It kind of took over, ate the world. Um, so, with this methodology and microservices being a thing, this is where GitOps uh, came into visibility, right? And GitOps was not just faster; it was fundamentally more adaptive. It's no longer fragile. GitOps and cloud native was agile, self-healing, scalable, and so on. So this is a quick snapshot of why we're here, what we're doing here, and how we go from infrastructure to platform engineering, right? And so we are here, allegedly, is down there on the right. So let's talk about platform engineering. Um, if this is an introduction to the concept, there's a lot of stuff we've already put out there, blogs, tons of webinars, tons of content. And if you're going to explore later this year, again, it'll be a theme there. For the vAdmin, cloud admin, cloud architects coming from the VMware background, platform engineering is definitely something that you're going to want to embrace, but also be a part of, right? Um, and there's a lot of reasons why. So if we look at the requirements coming in from an infrastructure perspective, right? So we have the platform teams, we have the developer teams, the SREs, and the tenant admins, and all those folks we talked about earlier, throwing out demands. And of course, we have the enterprise coming in and saying like CISO this and InfoSec that, and um, use this capability only because that's what we blessed, or that's what some analyst told us we have to use, and all of these requirements come into fruition, put this infrastructure, or add a lot of strain and unnecessary stress to this infrastructure. And at the end of the day, you've got this developer who just wants services to be able to push their code or commit their code using their tools, largely made up of open source and those those types of capabilities. So you've got this maze of requirements and services and limitations and boundaries and brick walls in some cases, to ultimately be able to deliver applications. And then you wonder, why was it so easy to just turn to a hyperscaler and just say, you know what, just give me those services? The net is, in existing on-prem private cloud which today still seem to have to be so different than the same organization adopting public cloud native or cloud native services, it's just not going to fly. It's not going to work, right? It's too cumbersome, too costly, and too risky. Okay. So we need to address this. We need to address, how do we get the hyperscaler level capabilities and functionality and scalability and all this stuff in my on-prem infrastructure, my private cloud? And this is where platform engineering on VCF comes in, right? So we follow the principles of platform engineering, to the same principles that are used for public clouds and everywhere else where we see scalable and very agile consumption of services. And we just apply that to our private cloud. Now, the private cloud itself needs to be primed to be able to deliver these capabilities upstream. So, of course, this is all only as good as the technologies you choose are capable of delivering. Now, there's some principles here that we need to ensure we've got down. In this world, of course, VMs, VMs are going to be around for as long as I think any of us are going to be professionals. Um, but the modern application is largely, when we say modern apps, we're largely talking about microservices. Um, we're talking about these GitOps driven application architectures and so on. And they're largely built around Kubernetes, right? Now, with that said, I hate the term modern app as a definition for Kubernetes-based applications or containers, right? That's not true. If you've got VMs and we've got customers with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of VMs that are also running microservices alongside them, that is more of the norm than a purely microservices-based infrastructure. So when we talk about modern apps, we're talking about any application that requires any of these needs today and that you're going to continue to support and deliver and evolve and may or may not include the microservices, the cloud native services. But if we were to just read the tea leaves, for the last 10 years, we've seen Kubernetes essentially become the de facto for application design. And that is absolutely what we're seeing and what we want to enable you to be able to do for on-prem infrastructure with VCF. Okay, so the trend here, Kubernetes is the de facto standard, right? Multiple platforms in each org, in each engineering org. So now we're seeing silos across orgs. We see that in our organization and in my old life, right? We've seen different BUs and different divisions use completely different tool sets, and this is normal. So we need to be able to support that while the powers that be start trying to, reconcile and bring things together. So more than one platform is the norm that we actually want to be able to address as well, if we need to address it. And then the platform approach being very developer or BU driven, right? Multiple tools across these organizations um, are very very common, right? So if we look at CNCF, for example, and open source tools, 200 plus projects and packages in CNCF. Um, we can see or we do see different projects or different capabilities being being used to accomplish the same tasks across teams within an organization. Now, that can become a headache and maybe overwhelming, but that's not necessarily broken, right? Because the application is defining the path that those developers use. That's not what our goal is here. Our goal isn't to eliminate open source or to eliminate all these tools. And we're going to get into what the goal actually is. Okay. So now, as we bring all of these realities together, right? These are the trends. This is happening. This isn't what's broken, although a lot of this can be considered, there's opportunity for improvement for sure. But this isn't what's necessarily broken. What's broken is how everything else is disconnected, as I mentioned earlier. So to do this, platform engineering defines something called the golden path. And the golden path is adds an opinionated wrapper around a very unopinionated set of services, right? So the enterprise here, which is going to be our focal point moving forward, the enterprise has a set of requirements. And what's failed miserably in the past is saying you are not allowed to use these tools. You are not allowed to use that service. You are not allowed because it doesn't conform to my enterprise policy A or policy B or InfoSec this and that, right? So what happens? I just go and do it in the public cloud. It's easier. And for some reason, InfoSec stops complaining because it's not running on the physical infrastructure. But if we can take those needs, right, embrace the open source community and open source tools that our developers want to use, that our platform engineers need to be able to provide, and wrap them in a way that is enterprise conformant and aligns with our policies, our governance, our security, our controls, and automation, and all the existing tools of the enterprise, then we actually have a win-win. The enterprise gets what it needs, and the platform engineers and the consumers get what they need, right? So the golden path um, is well, it's not a template, right? I'm not rubber stamping anything. It's not a mandate because the application, the project, the teams are defining how it is I need to consume this infrastructure. I guess sometimes it can be a mandate, but generally not a mandate. But it is the deliverable of the platform engineering team. It needs to be treated as a product. Therefore, it is versioned, it is upgraded, it is revised to be better, to provide cleaner services, and so on, right? And it's revised and evolves based on the needs of the developer, the consumer, and of course the enterprise. So this is constantly evolving, and of course I could have multiple paths across tenants and projects and capabilities. Okay, and then we do this because we need to really reconcile. We need to understand that the applications are driving these requirements, yet my services, the underlying infrastructure, isn't necessarily as agile as the application needs to be. So instead of having all of these choices and being overwhelmed and just saying, you know what, we're just not going to do this, we have to conform to this one way. Um, we are providing these golden paths to be able to handle the needs of the application while also delivering the services that the enterprise or the limits and guardrails that the enterprise needs. Now, golden paths aren't guardrails, but guardrails can be enforced through golden path. Okay. All right. So lots of advantages to doing this. Once you have your golden path, your IDP, which is the internal developer platform, and you're delivering your golden path, faster onboarding, you've got consistent and reliable security capability. We know the tools that are used for things like observability, for measuring access, for controlling access and visibility, having governance, and so on. So lots of positives here, and we're already running on low on time, so we need to move on. Okay, so now there are a lot of cautions here, right? We can, if you've ever been to a KubeCon, which we just did a couple weeks ago in Amsterdam, um, it is overwhelming, right? So we can say like, hey, we're doing this platform engineering this thing, right? And we need to be able to bring in these tools because that's what the applications are demanding and the developers are demanding and so on. And now I have all of these platform engineers supporting all of these separate IDPs with just tools or tool sprawl beyond my control. That is an extreme example, but something that we want to avoid. Now, I did mention that a golden path and the IDP is designed to be able to bring those tools in and use them the way the enterprise requires. However, there is a responsibility here to say, okay, which tools and which services and solutions and apps are going to deliver what I need, and only what I need. Right. So instead of having the same team using 8 different tools to deliver the same thing, let's have a conversation and be able to bring those down into a consumable amount of tools. Because keep in mind, you need to lifecycle these, you need to evolve the platform and so on. Disparate infrastructure. This has been, I mean, this could have been a slide for 10 years now, right? And then no self-service interface. Again, a slide we could have had for 10 years. There's different ways to achieve these, but when we're talking about what developers want, how to consume what we're delivering here on VCF, those interfaces need to be instantly available. They need to be comfortable. They need to be um, uh, familiar, right? So the developers and the consumers here, they have preferences, and you're going to see actually a lot of examples here in the later sessions. They have preferences in the interfaces they use. So part of this platform is going to be ensuring that those interfaces exists, right? Okay, so real quick, let's talk about why infrastructure matters. Now, finally, I'm going to get to VCF. Now, VCF has come a long way, and there's so many of you on this call, which is awesome to see. And we're seeing a lot of really positive feedback on what we've done with VCF 9. For those who've been around, you've seen us deliver different versions of this. Really, it was a suite of products, and then we turned it into VCF, where we have kind of an automated implementation of a suite of products, and then deeper and deeper integration, which was actually more like API communication, not true integration. That's been my experience in the 16 plus years that I've been here. Um, but what we've seen in the last couple of years from VCF 5X to 9, and what we're delivering in the next iterations of this, is truly a platform play that I've been dreaming of, right? And maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit. I don't actually dream of this stuff, but it is something that I wish we did as VMware years and years and years ago, because the platform is different than a suite of products. And what I've seen VCF do is truly build this solution that is self-aware, but also aware of all of its incorporated services, and designed for these personas and these problems and these issues that I've been talking about. And it's truly designed to be a replacement for public cloud consumption, for all those customers moving to the private cloud, right? So that means it has to be application centric, but it has to be application centric without losing our core fundamentals, or our core principles as VMware, which is building the gold standard for enterprise software. So now you're getting, we've built a platform that is delivering the capabilities that are so desirable from a public cloud perspective. The cloud native capabilities, the scalability, the controls, the interfaces, and so on, and doing that in a private cloud in ways that VMware hasn't ever done before. This holistically, right? So it's been hugely positive for the platform, for the consumers of the platform. We're talking purely capability, technology, innovation, that type of thing. Hugely positive and very much app centric, right? So what we deliver now is a cloud native, composable API first architecture, which is certainly a key principle for delivering any modern apps, right? It needs to be declarative. We need to be able to bring our GitOps tools and our GitOps processes, observability and understanding what's happening across the environment as it comes online instantly, right? Closed loop automation to continue to evolve our observability platform as applications evolve, right? But also applying GitOps practices to VCF itself, right? We need to treat the platform as one of our key applications. And to do that, we need to interface and manage and lifecycle the platform itself as we would a modern app, right? And then, of course, a gold standard in the enterprise for being VMware is this zero trust security, the compliance all the way through the stack and into vSphere. And then all of that coming together to deliver platform engineering as a foundation from the get-go, right? So you implement VCF or you upgrade to VCF and you're ready to go. Now, of course, there's a lot of steps to do between then and there, but it is the foundation. One thing I will not tell you, nor would anybody else on today's calls tell you, webinar tell you, is VCF is not an internal developer platform. That is not what we're here to say. That would be pretty silly to say. What VCF does is deliver the foundation, right? And several of the key services, namely Kubernetes, the observability tools, the automation tools, obviously the compute, storage, and networking capabilities, to deliver an IDP that is suitable for your use case, your developers, your consumers. It is not a one size fits all. And if we position VCF as the IDP, no, that's not what it is, right? You're going to build this platform or build your IDP on top of VCF as a foundation which enables you to now bring in all of these different services. And I'm out of time, so I'm going to give you a couple of snapshots. Now, all of this wraps around Kubernetes. The last session we had dove pretty deep into VKS and the Kubernetes capabilities, but I want to finish up here with all of those things in mind. Again, this was just a primer on our approach to platform engineering. And as you go down this journey, there's a lot of key capabilities that you have to think about. Now, a lot of these boxes that I'm drawing out here exist in your environments. VCF builds all of this for you as well. The smaller boxes and the smaller services inside largely are swappable, except for, I guess, infrastructure. You probably don't want to constantly be swapping infrastructure. But if we look at all of these different boxes and say, okay, from a platform engineering perspective, I need to consider beyond infrastructure, right? What are my platform services? How am I going to abstract it? What's governance and security look like? This is, again, VMware's big advocacy for governance and security and the full stack security down into the runtime and access into the physical infrastructure. How am I going to measure it on the right? What are my SLAs and SLOs, and how am I going to manage incidences? And of course, what is the developer experience going to look like? If that layer fails up top, all of this fails. But ultimately, we're doing this for the application, for reliability, and for us to deliver the goods for the developers and consumers. Now, I said this is all swappable, but if we just take a mental snapshot of what you see on the screen here, this is what VCF builds. Okay. Now, it's not VCF alone. And as I mentioned, VCF is not the IDP, but VCF, as you can see here, plays an essential role in getting you to where you need to be faster, more, and more confidently than ever before. So with that, we've done a huge shift to embracing CNCF community and the open source community. You're going to see a lot of examples of that again today. VCF as the core foundation is the takeaway from all of this. And if there's one takeaway, and if there's any other questions, please do bring it to the Q&A. I'm going to stay on for most of the day, and I could continue to answer questions as needed. So with that, I will leave you. Somehow only 6 minutes over. So I'll take it to Q&A.
Thank you so much, Jad. We so appreciate that. I know that was a ton of content in a short period of time. So, but I think that was a great way to start the day. I know we have a couple outstanding questions in Q&A, and we have a little break before the next session. So didn't know if you wanted to answer those live or we have a couple minutes, or we're happy to carry
Sure.
those over to the next one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If we have our panelists on that want to call out any of the questions instead of going
Yes.
through.
Are the observability tools with VKS comparable to Prometheus Grafana stack?
So we say comparable. We actually can consume Grafana and Prometheus. Not consume, incorporate or integrate with those tools. Now, out of the box, VCF shifts with several, not several, but VCF operations, which is kind of the flagship ops tool across the VCF stack. So largely infrastructure, our services, but of course extending into VMs, into the Kubernetes services, and into the apps themselves. Now, ops you could think of as your knock tool, right? That is the your truth, right? Whereas Grafana, Prometheus, and other solutions can provide application-centric visibility, observability, and so on. But bringing all of that together and being able to get high-level views of not just what's happening at the application, but how it impacts the entire infrastructure down to your compute, storage, network layer. That is really the big play here. But of course, the platform engineer is not going to use or is not going to have the views to manage at the physical host level. That's not what the platform engineer is job is, the infrastructure admin is. That is my very long, drawn out way of saying absolutely, um, bring those tools to the table, integrate them into your environment, use them, and we also ship, with some of those tools and are contributors to. I'm trying to remember which one. But yeah, the answer is bring those tools. The VCF platform will then correlate, consume, and provide these end-to-end knock views with those observability tools. Where VCF can't do it for you, though. Um, I think I answered that question.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know we had someone drop a link as well. So
Okay.
great. I know we're a little bit over, but thank you everyone for holding on. A couple housekeeping things with how Zoom events will work today. So this one will close. You'll get back to the lobby. We have a short break, about 10 minutes. We'll then kick off the next one, but you have some time to refill your coffee, your tea, get in a comfy spot, and load up for the next one. We so appreciate everyone being here. As a quick reminder, this was being recorded. We will post the recordings on YouTube, and I'll make sure to drop those playlist links in the chat on the future episodes. And then you will also be getting an email if you're watching this that we'll send to you as well. Thanks, everyone.
Erica, there's
Excellent.
one Q&A. Could we address it just before we go to
Oh,
break?
absolutely. Yep. I totally missed
Yeah,
that
because I
one.
think it's an important one to get out of the way up front is what are the differences between the VKS platform and the Tanzu platform? So like Jad, I can take this or you can take it either way.
Oh, go for it, Miles. Go for it.
Okay. So the key differentiator here is Tanzu doesn't mean Kubernetes, right? VKS is our Kubernetes offering. It's the sort of open, bring your own platform, build it yourself, bring in third-party software, integrate how you want type of unopinionated platform that lets you build your apps and pipelines and stuff like that the way that you want to do it. The Tanzu platform is really good if what you want is a black box code to application running somewhere. You don't care that it runs on Kubernetes because it doesn't. It's more of a platform as a service type offering, right? So it's a comprehensive end-to-end solution that does everything from the code build to the runtime itself. So if you want a black box, which is opinionated, that's where you would use the Tanzu platform. If you want something that's a little bit more open, modular, or you have opinions about the tooling that you want to integrate with, maybe you have an open source first strategy, then that's why you would lean towards something like VKS.
Thanks, Miles. Appreciate you catching that one and getting that
Thanks,
out of the
man.
way for us. Great. Well, I'll go ahead and close this one. I'll send everyone back to the lobby, and then we'll see you at the next session. Thanks.
All right. Thanks all.